I'm Marilyn, and for the past 5 years, I've enjoyed a loving relationship with my boyfriend, Peter. 3 years ago, we decided to deepen our commitment by moving in together, dreaming of the day we would eventually marry. The only thing left to make it official was to register our marriage. Peter, however, envisioned a wedding ceremony that we could hold once we had the financial means. I took a more practical approach, advocating for completing the legal registration first and planning the ceremony afterward. Nevertheless, Peter insisted that we marry before taking any other steps. During one of our conversations, I discovered that I was pregnant. I eagerly shared the news with Peter, anticipating his excitement. Instead, he seemed indifferent, his brows furrowing in confusion as if he were questioning the timing of my pregnancy. Despite his reaction, I argued that we needed to register our marriage before our child arrived to avoid any legal issues concerning our baby's legitimacy. Peter listened but remained firm that we should have the wedding first, followed by registration. As my pregnancy progressed, his stance did not waver. Even with my persistent requests, friends and family began to voice their concerns about our future, wondering if I might become a single mother. Regardless of their worries, I felt powerless without Peter's agreement. Then, unexpectedly, in the last month of my pregnancy, Peter had a change of heart. He proposed that we go ahead with the marriage registration, realizing how strange it would be for him to have to adopt his own child. Relieved yet cautious, I agreed, and we decided to move quickly. However, upon submitting our marriage registration, an unforeseen complication arose. A city official informed me that I was unable to marry Peter because, according to their records, I had recently been divorced, something I had no knowledge of. I was stunned, as I had never been married or divorced. The official suggested a strange mix-up might have occurred, involving a fraudulent divorce filing, likely to exploit immigration regulations concerning someone I didn't know. This revelation turned our situation into a legal nightmare. The city office informed us that they could not proceed with our marriage registration due to a civil code requiring a 120-day waiting period after a divorce. This law was meant to clarify paternity, but in our case, it only added to the confusion and delay. We found ourselves in a state of uncertainty. Our plans to marry and create a legally recognized family for our child were now in jeopardy. We were advised to contact the police for assistance, leaving us with a heavy heart and an uncertain future, all while awaiting the arrival of our baby, whom we knew was undoubtedly ours. Amid our confusion and disbelief, Peter joined us. Sensing the tension in the room, he asked what was wrong, but the city official, realizing he couldn't help any further, excused himself, leaving us to confront our turmoil. I was left grappling with the dilemma of how to reveal this shocking news to Peter. He had just decided to marry me, and I worried that sharing the truth might cause him to reconsider. The impact on our unborn child weighed heavily on my mind. As I struggled with fear, anger surged within me. It felt utterly absurd that I was caught in this predicament despite having done nothing wrong. Noticing my distress, Peter pressed for an explanation. In a moment of panic, I blurted out the police and started to leave, but he quickly caught up with me, insisting on knowing what was happening. At that moment, I realized that avoiding the truth would only worsen the situation. Gathering my resolve, I disclosed everything I learned from the city official. Peter's reaction was one of disbelief. He couldn't comprehend how I, someone who had never encountered a foreigner and had longed to marry him, could be entangled in such a predicament. As Peter attempted to reassure me, I could see his complexion pale, likely contemplating the implications of our marriage plans. He suggested we should avoid involving the police, a proposal that left me bewildered. His reasoning seemed to downplay the urgency of our situation, suggesting a passive acceptance of the waiting period before we could marry. This calmness was perplexing, especially given the implications for our child, who would be registered as adopted under these circumstances. Peter's reassurances did little to ease my frustration. How could we stand idly by and accept a situation that would not only affect us but also have lasting repercussions for our child? His insistence on steering clear of the police, combined with his unusual tranquility, raised my suspicions. It felt like his concerns were less about the divorce issue and more about the potential fallout from involving law enforcement. Despite his hesitation, I couldn't shake the feeling that we needed to take decisive action to clarify this misunderstanding and protect our future. The idea of our child growing up with a false identity in the family registry was unbearable. Peter's attitude, while seemingly practical, felt like a capitulation to circumstances beyond our control, neglecting the deeper issues at stake. As we stood at a crossroads, the contrast between Peter's outward calmness and his internal anxiety became evident. His reluctance to involve the police hinted at a deeper fear, perhaps of the unknown consequences such an investigation could bring. Yet deep down, I knew that inaction was not an option. The well-being of our unborn child and the integrity of our family unit demanded that we seek the truth, even if it meant confronting challenges head-on. The journey to the police station might be filled with uncertainty, but it was a necessary step toward resolving this perplexing situation and safeguarding our future. Peter tried to comfort me, suggesting that consulting the police wouldn't immediately resolve our predicament or allow us to marry right away. He reasoned that if a consultation could lead to an instant marriage, it might be worthwhile, but since that wasn't possible, he saw it as an unnecessary delay. His attempts to calm me, offering to fetch a drink while I sat, plunged me into deep contemplation as I reflected on our relationship. I began to recognize a pattern in Peter's behavior. He consistently found reasons to postpone our marriage. His lackluster response to my pregnancy and his seeming disinterest in our future together left me feeling unsettled. Although he had recently agreed to register our marriage, his calmness and hesitation to involve the authorities only intensified my doubts. When Peter returned with a drink, opting for juice instead of coffee to be mindful of our unborn child, he attempted to lighten the mood. However, despite his efforts, suspicion clouded my thoughts. I couldn't help but question the motivations behind his sudden urgency to marry, especially in light of the unexpected divorce revelation. His forced smile and evasive comments deepened my anxiety, revealing an underlying discomfort that hinted at dishonesty. As I pressed him for clarity, his defenses began to falter. He confessed that his push for a quick marriage was driven by financial considerations rather than a genuine commitment to our relationship. The heartbreaking realization that he had been strategically planning this, watching the calendar to capitalize on the situation, was devastating. Peter rationalized his actions as necessary for our future, claiming that the funds gained from this scheme were for our benefit. He urged me to be patient, insisting that a mere 5-month wait wouldn't significantly impact our lives. Yet, the repercussions of his actions were profound. Our child would be born out of wedlock, and I would bear the burden of a divorce record from a marriage that never actually existed. This deception, motivated by financial gain, forced me to reevaluate the very foundation of our relationship and what lay ahead. Peter seemed indifferent to the complexities of our predicament, suggesting that a history of marriage or divorce was insignificant. He argued that family records often went overlooked unless there was a pressing issue, implying my concerns were unwarranted. He believed I was overreacting and encouraged me to adopt a more relaxed attitude. He revealed that he had arranged sham marriages for foreigners in his business dealings, using my name for financial advantage. This scheme had netted us $112,000, though he hadn't fully considered the legal consequences that barred us from remarrying right away. His admission illuminated his previous evasions whenever I inquired about legal documentation or marriage registration. It seemed he had been biding his time, waiting for the 4-year period of the sham marriage to conclude, particularly with my due date drawing near. He wanted to avoid a situation where our child would be labeled as adopted, emphasizing his paternal instincts. Despite the underlying deceit, Peter assured me that the blemish on my family record was temporary. He promised that everything would be resolved in 5 months when we could legally marry. Yet, he trivialized the seriousness of fabricating a marriage, viewing it as a simple transaction that benefited us financially and the foreign individual involved by facilitating their path to U.S. citizenship. When I suggested using the $112,000 for our wedding, Peter hesitated before admitting that the money was gone, spent on settling his personal debts. This revelation only heightened my mistrust, showcasing his readiness to manipulate situations for his benefit, even at the expense of legal and ethical boundaries. His vague explanations regarding his debts, along with his admission of still owing money, painted a picture of a man entangled in both financial and moral turmoil. Despite his reassurances, the fabric of trust between us began to unravel, forcing me to confront the painful realization that the person I thought I knew was becoming increasingly distant. obscured by his actions and a veil of deceit. In a shocking twist, my life took a perilous turn because of Peter's actions. He had exploited my identity to facilitate a sham marriage, a revelation that left me reeling and resolved to report him to the authorities for his wrongdoing. Despite his protests and desperate attempts to prevent me from going to the police, his actions led to a terrifying accident. While I was rushing to seek help, Peter pushed me, causing me to tumble down the stairs. The fall was harrowing and resulted in my water breaking prematurely. Amidst the fear and pain, my primary concern was for the safety of my unborn child. Incredibly, despite the ordeal, my child was born healthy in the hospital. However, the reality of Peter's betrayal and his reckless disregard for our lives became painfully apparent. He never came to visit us in the hospital, solidifying my resolve to never forgive him for endangering our child and displaying such callousness toward the sanctity of life. As I recuperated from both the birth and the fall, I sought refuge at my parents' home and confided in my mother. Her shock and sympathy were evident, reinforcing my determination to hold Peter accountable for his actions. My mother quickly researched the legal implications of Peter's forgery, confirming that he could face serious consequences, including imprisonment or hefty fines. However, the potential leniency of these consequences felt like a betrayal of the gravity of his actions. Fueled by a desire for justice and to protect others from a similar fate, I decided to confront Peter's parents. Leaving my child safely with my mother, I visited them to disclose the full extent of Peter's deceit. The shock and disappointment on their faces were palpable as I recounted my story, from the fraudulent marriage to the dangerous fall and the birth of my child under such traumatic circumstances. Peter's parents were understandably upset, expressing their apologies and sharing in my outrage. Their reaction only strengthened my resolve to seek justice for the wrongs committed against me and my child. Our conversation also revealed Peter's ongoing financial issues, adding another layer of complexity to his deceitful actions. As I left Peter's parents' house, my determination grew stronger. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the sake of my child and my dignity, I was prepared to take every necessary step to ensure that Peter faced the consequences of his actions. The pursuit of justice was not merely about retribution. It was about reclaiming my life and securing a safe future for my child. During my recovery from the hospitalization, I arranged a meeting with Peter's parents. My goal was not to seek a favor but to ensure they fully understood the entire situation. I explained that I could no longer forgive Peter for his actions and was planning to file for divorce. It was crucial for them to recognize the potential complications their son's behavior might cause in the future. I wanted to emphasize that maintaining the status quo was not an option, stressing the seriousness of the situation and my commitment to moving forward with the divorce. Upon hearing everything, Peter's parents expressed their disappointment and concurred that divorcing him was the right decision. They even assured me that they would sever ties with him should he seek their support. This firm stance from his parents was more than I could have hoped for, and I felt grateful for their understanding and acceptance of my decision. Additionally, I made it clear that I intended to ensure Peter faced the consequences for endangering our child's life, even if it meant creating a rift between us. The weight of the situation was apparent to me, as well as to Peter's mother, who visibly struggled with the thought of her son facing legal repercussions. While I empathized with her distress, my determination to protect my child and seek justice remained steadfast. I approached Peter's parents, asking if they could reach out to him. I suggested it would be more prudent for Peter to come forward and apologize rather than face an unexpected arrest. His mother agreed to make the call without disclosing my presence or mentioning the fraudulent marriage, merely expressing a desire to see him. When Peter arrived, he likely expected a family gathering but was taken aback to find me waiting. His reaction and our confrontation laid bare his indifference to the seriousness of his actions. He tried to brush off the accusation of having pushed me down the stairs as an accident and downplayed the sham marriage, claiming it was a charitable act for foreigners seeking to obtain U.S. citizenship. His justifications rang hollow, especially considering I had been kept completely in the dark about the entire scheme. Peter's ignorance of the legal consequences of his actions, combined with his disregard for the emotional and physical dangers he had put me in, highlighted his irresponsible nature. It was evident that he had never thought about the legal and ethical ramifications of his choices or the need to ensure the legitimacy of our family before our child's birth. This meeting solidified my determination to pursue a divorce and take legal action against Peter. His dismissive attitude and failure to grasp the gravity of the situation only strengthened my resolve to safeguard my child and seek justice. During our heated exchange, Peter revealed his true character, showing no remorse for the manipulation and deceit that had plagued my life. He seemed indifferent to the chaos he had caused, trivializing the severe implications of his actions with a nonchalant attitude. Shockingly, Peter even suggested I participate in the same fraudulent scheme he had concocted, demonstrating a total disregard for the law and our child's well-being. His proposal that I could easily marry another foreigner for financial gain, ignoring the fraudulent nature of it all, was outrageous. Peter's boldness knew no bounds. He even made veiled threats against me and our child to deter me from reporting him to the authorities. His callousness was clear as he attempted to manipulate me into silence, using our child's safety as leverage. This reprehensible behavior only reinforced my decision to distance myself from him and his illegal activities. Despite Peter's threats, I stood my ground, rejecting his twisted reasoning and making it clear that his actions were inexcusable. His attempt to justify his behavior as helpful was absurd, particularly after he admitted to pushing me down the stairs, a confession he quickly tried to downplay. In an act of defiance, I misled Peter into believing I would not report him to the police, a strategy to shield my child from any immediate danger he might pose. Peter, mistaking my silence for compliance, arrogantly thought he had coerced me into submission. His parting words, filled with arrogance and lacking any remorse, were a chilling reminder of his true nature. Nevertheless, my determination remained unshaken. As soon as Peter left, I sought legal advice to take decisive action against him. My visit to a lawyer marked the beginning of a legal battle to hold Peter accountable for his actions, not just for my sake, but also to protect others from becoming victims of his schemes. The lawsuit I filed prompted a thorough investigation by law enforcement, resulting in significant consequences for Peter. His accomplice in the sham marriage was deported, and Peter faced legal repercussions, including a prison sentence. This outcome, while a step toward justice, starkly illustrated the repercussions of Peter's deceit, not only emotionally but also in the tangible effects on lives and the legal system. Looking back on the ordeal, it was clear that the time I spent entangled in Peter's lies was a painful chapter in my life, but one I was determined to close. Armed with newfound strength and resolve, I aimed to create a safe and secure future for my child, free from the shadows of deceit and crime. After serving a 6-year sentence, Peter was released from prison only to confront a harsh reality. Without the backing of his parents, who were deeply disheartened by his actions and chose not to provide him financial assistance or visit him in prison, Peter found himself navigating life alone. Despite the seriousness of his circumstances, he seemed unfazed and even contemplated embarking on another fraudulent scheme involving a sham marriage. However, finding willing participants proved to be more difficult than he had expected, resulting in a life marked by isolation and hardship. With no support, Peter struggled to secure employment due to his criminal record, and his living conditions deteriorated to the brink of homelessness. In a desperate move, he reached out to me again, hoping to persuade me to lend my name to yet another of his schemes. Appalled by his audacity and refusal to learn from his past, I firmly rejected his request. I urged him to seek legitimate work instead of resorting to illegal activities, though it was unclear if my words resonated with him at all. After that encounter, Peter vanished, leaving no indication of his whereabouts or current circumstances. Meanwhile, I returned to my childhood home, focusing on raising my child with the support of my parents. Despite the initial challenges of childbirth and the chaotic events that preceded it, my child is growing up healthy and vibrant, bringing joy and fulfillment to my daily life. These demanding days have proven incredibly rewarding, providing me with a fresh start and an opportunity to build a stable and happy future for my child, free from the shadows of the past. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Stay stunned.